starting in just a couple of minutes. Until then, enjoy the music and go download the handouts. Thank you. Okay, hello and welcome folks to Basic Microsoft Word at the Ferguson Library. So I'm Frank Skornia. I'm the digital librarian for Adult Information Services at the Ferguson Library, which means I handle teaching a lot of our computer classes, scheduling computer classes, and working with our electronic resources like our ebooks and databases. I'm also a reference librarian, so you can find me usually sitting on the reference desk at the Ferguson Library if you have any questions. So tonight we are looking at basic Microsoft Word. So in order to follow along, quickly kind of go over some things kind of working with classes here on YouTube. First off, what you're seeing is slightly delayed from where I'm at. So I am going to be a little bit ahead of wherever you're at. But if you have any questions, there are now 2 different places that you can submit a question while you're watching. One is in the YouTube chat, which is right underneath the video that you're watching. You can go ahead and drop something into there, and I will see it. And then I drop it at any point when I think there's a good time to stop. I will go back and see your questions. If you are not signed into Google or into YouTube and you still want to add a chat, I have added a new resource, and I'll go over that in just a second about where you can go to kind of start asking questions if you want. The other thing that you want to do as you're following along with the class is if you want to have Microsoft Word already installed on your computer, and you'll also want to go and download the handouts at fergusonlibrary.org/online-tech-classes. And what that'll do is if you go to that website, that will take you to this site here. And let me just zoom in a bit to make sure so it's not so small for all of you. There we go. So this is where we have all of the online class resources. You can see we have the link to the channel down here. We have the upcoming class schedule. So you can see we're going to be doing Tuesday nights through September and October, with a final class actually on the last Wednesday of October as well too, to kind of fit everything in. So you can see we're starting off with the Microsoft Word series. Basic Microsoft Word this week. Next week we're going to do intermediate Microsoft Word, and then on September 15th will be advanced Microsoft Word. Kind of moving down, you'll see there's a section here about participation and chat. Let me just close this here. And so if you want to, if you don't want to sign into the YouTube or onto Google, or you don't have a Google account and you want to be able to ask a question, you can click on this link here. And what this will do is this will take you to the chat room here, and you can then just ask a question right in the chat. You can type down in the box down, ask a question in the chat, and I will see that. And I will answer the question when I find when there's a good time to answer that there. So if you want to be able to ask chat, if you don't want to use YouTube, go ahead and use the chat. I'm going to be able to see both of them, so that's so use whichever one that you're comfortable using. Now, moving further down on the page, we have we have a list of all the different classes, and if you click on the little plus next to it, it will expand the section. And so this is the section that we have for Basic Microsoft Word, and there are two different links here that you'll want to pay attention to. One of them is the exercise handout, and so this will be a PDF file that you will, if you click on it, it will open up in your browser, or it might download, and then when you open it up, it's going to look like this here. Let me just make sure you can kind of see the whole thing. So this is the handout here. It's 3 pages. So there's just some kind of basic kind of reference stuff here for Microsoft Word, and then the exercises that we're doing. Right now, disregard the lynda.com. I actually have to go in and update the further study and practices. We are no longer providing subscription to lynda.com. We actually offer subscription to a different service now, and I'll talk about that at the end of the class actually. So as I go through the class, one of the things that I recommend that kind of works best, let me just change back to here. One of the things that works best is that I will go through and I will demonstrate and show you things on the screen here. And when we get to start doing the exercises, I will show an exercise or a first couple of exercises. And then what I'll do is I will then stop and give you about 2 to 3 minutes to go off into Microsoft Word and do the exercise yourself. That's a good time to ask questions, or if you need me to re-clarify or do anything, I can explain it during that time. And then when I feel people are kind of caught up on the exercises, I'll go through and continue with the next set of exercises. So that said, that should cover most of kind of logistics of doing the class here. So let's get into what we'll be doing actually in Basic Microsoft Word. So first off, what this class is going to cover. We're going to be looking at how to open, save, and create Microsoft Word documents. We're going to look at what they call the Backstage View of Microsoft Word, and it's kind of a little fancy term for something that you're probably already familiar with, but I'll kind of explain what that is and what you can find in that area there. We're going to look at copying and pasting in a Microsoft Word document, and then we're going to look at some basic text formatting and keyboard shortcuts. So we're looking at some kind of the very basic skills in Microsoft Word. If you're looking for something, you don't really have to have any familiarity with Microsoft Word to do this class here. The only thing you just have to be kind of comfortable with is just being in Windows, moving around to different windows, and just opening up Microsoft Word itself. I'll kind of talk about everything else that we're doing there. So if there are any questions, feel free to drop them, but I am going to go in and start. So let's dive right into Microsoft Word. So when you open up Microsoft Word, this is what you'll normally see. And I should probably clarify right now that this class, everything that we're kind of doing here is kind of focused on Microsoft Word 365 or Microsoft Word 2016 or 2019. So the most recent versions of Microsoft Word. I'm using Office 365 here, but it should look about the same as if you have Office 2016 or 2019. If you're using a little bit older version, if you're using Office 2010 or Office 2013, things might look a little bit different. Not really for this class. This class here, all the basic stuff really should be about the same and should all work the same. But if you are having any sort of confusion with what I'm showing you, it's not matching with what you're seeing on your screen, then let me know in either of the chats, and I will then help try to figure out kind of where you should be and what you should be looking at that's different than what I'm demonstrating here. So when you open up Microsoft Word, it opens up in what's called the Backstage View. So this is the Backstage View. It's kind of the administrative interface for Microsoft Word. This is where you're able to kind of do things like create a new document. You can see new or open over here. So you can be able to create a new or open documents. We'll come back to the Backstage View when we have more stuff to kind of work with on here. But right now, let's just kind of go in and create a new document. So we can either actually double click on blank document up here, or I can go down to new and then just click on blank document there. And this will then open up Microsoft Word's blank document. This is kind of the standard way that you will see Word, that you'll spend a lot of time looking at in Word here. So I'm going to kind of give a quick tour of some of the useful areas that you want to pay attention to as you're learning about Microsoft Word here. The first is the big section right here in the middle, the thing that kind of draws all of our focus here. And this is basically your work area. This is where you're able to see the page and the text as you're entering it on there. And you can kind of see, you're able to see, at least in the setting that I have on here, you're able to see the outline of the page that you're working on to kind of get a sense of how it will look when you print it out. Right at the top of the window, we have what Microsoft calls the ribbon. So the ribbon is where you find all of your commands and tools that you need while you're working in Microsoft Word. It usually opens up into what's known as the Home tab. So the tabs are these little, if you notice right above the ribbon is like a line of menus up here. We have Home, Insert, Design, Layout, and so on. Each of those are different tabs on the ribbon. So you can see right now, because the Home is underlined, I'm in the Home tab. And the Home tab is kind of where you end up spending a lot of time, where some of the most common tools that you need are found in this area. And this is where we're going to spend most of tonight's class, is doing stuff in here in the Home tab of the ribbon. So over here we have things like our copy and paste. On there we have our fonts. So this allows you to change like how the text looks, what size it is, what color it is, whether it's bold or underlined. And so there's a bunch of different kind of tools that you can do to kind of change how the text actually looks on the page. The next section over here is the paragraph section. And so this, whereas the font changes like the actual like typeface and how the text is showing up on the page, the paragraph section changes how the text is arranged on your page. So things like, is it going to be left justified? Is it going to go across the left side of the page, or is it going to be right justified? Is it going to go over on the right side of the page, where it's all going to line up on that side there? Are you going to use bullets or numbers? Don't worry about these here. These are things that we're going to be covering in Intermediate Word. So if you're interested in that there, join us next week for Intermediate Word. Things like the spacing. Is it going to be double spaced or single spaced? That's where you have these kind of issues. You have the tools here for that there. Moving over, we have a whole section here on styles. This takes up a lot of section on the home ribbon, on the Home tab of the ribbon. This is another area that we're not going to be covering tonight, but will be covered in next week's class. So come back next week for that information there. Moving over, we have our find and replace, and then there's a couple different tools for things like voice entry into Microsoft Word as well too. Some other kind of areas of the ribbon that are kind of important to know here at a basic level. The first is the insert. So this is where you're actually able to insert different things onto the page, whether it be like pictures or things like page numbers. A lot of that kind of falls into this area here. And this is another thing that's going to get covered in Intermediate Word. Again, as I mentioned, tonight's class is going to focus a lot on just kind of entering text into Microsoft Word and kind of the basics of starting to kind of work with the text as you type it in. Next week in Intermediate Word, we're going to look at how to kind of insert, make things like pictures and tables and things onto, and kind of start adding things to the text that you're putting into Microsoft Word. But I just wanted to show that that's kind of the things that you find in this Insert tab on the ribbon. And then the last one that will that's just kind of useful to know at a kind of a basic level right now is the layout. Layout is a basically decide, whereas if you remember when I was talking about like the font section here talks about how the text looks, and the paragraph talks about how the text is organized on the page, layout actually starts talking about how the pages are laid out. And so this is where you get things like the margins, the orientations. Is it going to be portrait or is it going to be landscaped on there? Are you going to have columns? Are you going to do page breaks on there? So a lot of that stuff comes here in the layout. So when you're trying to figure out when you're printing how to kind of make it look on the page, that's where the layout section kind of comes in. So that's just kind of a brief kind of things that we're kind of looking at here in the ribbon. So again, we're going to spend most of our time here in the Home tab on the ribbon. The last part that's kind of useful to pay attention to in the interface for Microsoft Word is down here at the bottom is what they call the status bar. And so down at the status bar, you have things like it tells you like what page number you're currently on. My start menu is getting in the way. What page number you're on and how many pages you have so far, how many words you've written on there. Spell check is available down here. Go over to the right, down here on the right. So I'm kind of going down this area, down here. Over to here, you have things like zoom, which allows you to make it appear larger on your screen or make it appear smaller on your screen. So if you're trying to see more stuff or see stuff closely, you can zoom in or out as necessary. And then there's just kind of different views, like whether or not you're seeing it in like read mode, which is not good, or something like web layout. Most times you're in what they call the print layout, where you're actually kind of able to see what it looks like on the page. It's kind of what you're seeing is how it'll look on the page there. So those are kind of the main parts of the Microsoft Word window that you're working that are useful to be familiar with. You have the ribbon up at the top with the different tabs on the ribbon. You have your work area down here in the middle, and then you have your status bar down at the bottom. That just kind of gives you useful information, useful status things on there. Now, when you start working with the ribbon, there are a couple different things to kind of pay attention to. There's a couple different kind of interesting kind of interface things that that Microsoft does in the ribbon that you should kind of pay attention to. So the first is, let me see if I can find an example of it. Let's see, which one is doing it? Okay, so if over here on the paste. So over here on the top left on the paste here, you'll notice as I move my button up and down, there are actually two different buttons here. There's the paste button, and this is just the default paste. So this is as if I copied something and I just wanted to paste it without doing anything special or anything with that there. I would just click the top part of the button here, and that just does an automatic default paste. The bottom part here, you'll notice that as I move it down, like top part is grayed out. Now the bottom part is grayed out. When I click on the bottom part, it opens up a menu and gives me paste options. So you'll see this kind of design in a lot of different parts on the ribbon, where it's kind of like a two-part button there, where it looks like one button, but when you put your mouse over it, you'll see you have two different functions. And so the top one is usually kind of like the basic default thing that will happen when you need to do it. And then the bottom part will give you usually kind of like an expanded menu of how things work. And I just realized I'm going to actually quickly, I just want to move my location on the screen. Oop. I had it up in the top there for another purpose, and down here it works better. I block less stuff down here than I do up there, so that's just the reason why I'm moving that. And actually, let me also move this. Move my little logo. There we go. just so that you can kind of see everything that, because I realized it was kind of obscuring that section right up there on the section right up here on the top. So that's all kind of fixed now. So the other interesting thing with the ribbon that you kind of want to pay attention to is if you notice that in this whole section, like if we look at this font section right here, there's all these different font tools that are in there. But you'll notice down in the bottom right corner is this little icon that has like a box with kind of like an arrow out there. And what that is that's kind of like it's a pop-out icon. And so what it'll do is if I click on it, it will actually pop out the whole font dialog box, which gives me access to more detailed settings for fonts than I do right here on the ribbon. So what we have right here on the ribbon right now is a lot of the most common things that you need to use. It's very rare that usually that you'll have to click the little pop out to get access to different things, but sometimes you need to do that there to find different kind of settings on there. So that's what this does, and you can see I'm able to choose the font, change the style of it, whether it's italic or bold, change the size, coloring, and different kind of effects. Is it strike through? Is there a line going through it, or is it underlined? I can underline right up here, and then down here I'll just give like a little preview. So if I do strike through, you can see down here it's a preview of it being kind of crossed out. And then there's advanced. There's a bunch of different kind of advanced settings that you can kind of do on there. But that's the other thing to know about the ribbon is that sometimes there's like expanded options by clicking this little icon down in the bottom left. So even here, like on Clipboard, if I clip this out here, I get actually this kind of clipboard. I get this clipboard bar over here. So that is kind of the navigation and the basic layout of the Microsoft Word as we're working, as you tend to work on it there. Now I mentioned I wanted to talk about the Backstage View. So we've gone kind of a quick look at kind of how Microsoft Word looks. Now, if I wanted to save this file here, I would come up and go to File, and when you notice, okay, so up here again on the ribbon, here's we have our different tabs, and the tabs kind of start with Home. So you can see when I click each of these items here, it changes this section down below on the ribbon. But if over on the far left is this File option, and when I click that, that takes me to a completely different screen. It doesn't change the ribbon. Instead, it takes me to what's known as the Backstage View in Microsoft Office, as I explained before. Now, you notice our Backstage View has a lot more things in it than it did when we first opened it up. When we first opened up Microsoft Word, we just had Home, New, and Open. We just had these three options available there. Now we have a whole bunch we have like things like Info and Save As, Print. So this is where you find kind of your options. If you remember from the older versions of using Windows or older versions of using Microsoft Word or Microsoft Office programs, the File menu, and there'd be File, and there'd be like New, Save As, Open, and Print. Those would be all kind of listed in the File menu. They all exist now in this Backstage View. So if I wanted to go create a new file, I can come down and go to New and create a new file. Or if I wanted to open a file, I can come here to Open, and I can either look at kind of my recent files that I have here, or I could browse to the file that I want to go to. But then down here, over on the left here, on this part of the Backstage View, is kind of the different things that will work with the file that I currently have open. So if I click Info, for example, it gives me info about the file that I currently have. Now, since I have not saved this file yet, there isn't a lot of information that it can give me right now. All it can do is tell me is like when I created this here. So I created this at 7:11 p.m. It tells me who the authors are on here. And a lot of this stuff is automatic. If you're just jumping into Microsoft Word, this is stuff that you really don't have to kind of worry about. What is important is down here is the Save and Save As, for at least for the purpose of tonight's class. So if I go down, I want to save this file, even though I haven't entered anything yet. I want to save it, so as I'm working on it, I can save it as I continue working on it, because it's one of the important things when you're working in Microsoft Word. You never know what may happen to your computer or to your Microsoft Word file, so always save frequently. And so that would be usually like one of the first things. Like you start working on a Microsoft Word document, one of the first things you should do is just go and save it. just so that it's ready and you're able to save it really easily later on in the future. So I'm going to come down and I'm going to click Save. Now you'll notice that I clicked on this top part where it said Save, but the part that's highlighted or darker now here is Save As. And the reason for that there is that the first time that you save a file in Microsoft Word, we'll always do it as a Save As, because you need to choose where you're going to save the file, and you have to choose like what file name you're going to give. So you can see right now, like right now this is in Documents, and then right here is the place where I can put my file name on there. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change where I want to save this. So I'm going to click on Documents here, and I get your standard Microsoft Windows kind of file browser window on here. I'm just going to make things easy for myself here. I'm going to go to Desktop, and I'm just going to, and then down here I can do a file name. And so for this here, I'm just going to type basic word class. Word class. And you can see right now underneath it says save as type. Word documents save as what's known as a docx file format. So you can see docx. And so this is the file format that Microsoft created for Word starting in Microsoft Office 2007. Before that, any Microsoft Word files up until Word 2003, which was the version before 2007, up to 2003 was a doc file, a .doc file. But what happened is by the time they started developing Microsoft Word 2007, they wanted to be able to do more with the files than the doc file was allowing them to do. So they had to create a new file type. And so what they did was they created a docx file. And so that's where we are today. So if you have a version of Microsoft Word 2007 all the way up to Microsoft Word 2019 or Microsoft Word 365, they will all save as this docx file. You can change to the different type files. That's something actually we'll cover in a different class about why you want to kind of do that there. But for right now, just kind of leave everything as just docx. Almost anybody will be able to open a docx file. So I'm going to click Save. And now you'll notice right up here on the top, above the ribbon, there's this blue bar up here. And now you can see the name of the file that I created, basicwordclass.docx. And it's telling me it's saved to this PC, as opposed to being like saved to like OneDrive or something. That's really kind of what this is. Now I'm going to go back to the Backstage View. And remember last time when I was here in the Backstage View, when I click Save, it automatically jumped down to Save As. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click Save again, and it comes back to this view here. And the reason for that there is that I've already set the file name. The file name is basicwordclass.docx or docx. I've also told it where to save, where on my hard drive it's going to save, the desktop of my computer. So since it has those two pieces of information, it can just save that file right to that same place with that same file name. It doesn't have to ask for me. I don't have to tell it again where to save it or what file name to do it or what file name to use. Now, if I wanted to save this as a second copy, like I wanted to save another version of this here that's different than the one that I already have, or in a different place than the one that I already have, what I can do is I come back here to the Backstage View and File, and I can go back to Save As. And now you can see up here, there's the basic Word class, there's the desktop, but I can then go and I can click on this here and choose a different location. Like if I'm going to go put it here into the Ferguson library, I'm going to put it here and I'm going to click Save. And now it's saved. I have two different files in two different places. So Save As allows you to save and create a new file, giving it a new location where it gets saved and a new file name. When you just click Save, it just uses whatever the current file name and location is. There's a couple other different ways to save. If you notice right up here on this blue bar, which is known as the title, what used to be known as the title bar, there's a couple different icons up here on the top left, and you can see there's this diskette icon here. And this little diskette icon, that is also save. So if I click on that, and it'll automatically save. So as I'm working, typing stuff into the body of the document here, and then I want to save, I can just come up here and click that. It will save it. You'll also notice that when I put my mouse over it, it's a little, I think it might be a little hard to see on your screen if you're not looking too closely, but if you look there and such, there's like a little what they call a tooltip that shows up underneath, and it says save, telling me that if I click on that button, it does save, and then in parentheses, it says Control plus S, and what that's telling me is that I can use a keyboard shortcut. I can hold down the Control key on my keyboard and hit S, and it will then save the file. So if I'm, say, typing in Microsoft Word here, I want to save it, I don't have to lift my hands up from the keyboard. I can just go over and hit Control S, it's saved, ready to go. Now you notice that when I make changes, like if I delete this here, up here on the top, I still have my file name, but it no longer says save to PC, and that's because there's been changes. So the file that I have is different than the one that's currently saved. I hit Control S, and now it tells me save to this PC. So now it matches with the saved version. So there's just some things to kind of pay attention to when you're using Microsoft Word and you're saving your files. The final thing that we'll just kind of take a look at in the Backstage View is the print, because that's the other common thing that people want to do with Microsoft Word right out of the bat. I mean, that's the reason. You're typing something in there, and then you want to be able to send it out to a printer. So I went back to the file on here to go back to my Backstage View, and coming down there is a print option here now. So if I click on print, this takes me to the print preview screen. So over here I see a preview of what my page is going to look like, and since I don't have anything entered in there right now, it looks like just a blank page. Not very interesting, I know. And then over here on the left, I have my variety of different print options. So I can choose how many copies I want to print. I can choose what printer it's going to. So yeah, my printer is called Crystal Spellbook. Down here, I can tell how many pages I want to print. So do I want to print a whole document? So if I have 15 pages, do I want to print all 15 pages? Or do I just want to print, say, just the page that I'm currently on? I could have selected something and just print that little piece of it. I can also do like specific pages. Like if I want to print just pages 4 to 6, I can tell it just print 4 to 6. Print one-sided, so this will allow me, if I do this here, this will allow me to do like double-sided printing if I wanted to. So if you're working to save paper, you can then do some double-sided printing. And then moving on, we have things like portrait or landscape. So is it going to be like the wide side on the top, or is it going to be the narrow side on top? So how does the page look on there? What size paper you're working with? The margins are the white spaces on the top and bottom and edges in the sides of your page. And then how many pages per sheet? So if you wanted to, I could do like 2 pages per sheet and kind of fit more things on paper if I'm willing for it to be shrunken a little bit smaller in size. So that's the print thing. Now, this gets to one of the things that I say all the time in all of my classes. I'm going over a lot of stuff here, and I'm actually moving pretty quick on it there. So I understand if you are a little bit overwhelmed. Don't be. A lot of the stuff is kind of basic stuff that when you get in and you start using it, you'll find what you need to do. They kind of make it a little bit clearer on there. I also highly recommend going in and just playing around with it there and such. It is very difficult to break anything in Microsoft Word or break anything on your computer. Go in, try things out, see what happens. If you end up like getting things all messed up, it doesn't make any sense there and such, just close Microsoft Word and open it up again, and everything will be kind of back to normal at that point, back to the way it was when you first started. So you may lose a bit of work. That's where actually if you save, so if you want to try something out, save your file and try it out. See what happens. If you completely mess things up, you can just close Microsoft Word and then just reopen up the file. And when you close Microsoft Word, it'll ask you, do you want to save? Say no, and then open up your file, and it'll be right back to where you last saved it. So do not be afraid to go and try things out and experiment and see. Like, so if you're coming here to print, see what happens when you do like 2 or 4 pages per sheet on there. See what happens when you do like the portrait or the landscape. So try out those different options and just kind of see what they'll do as you're working in Microsoft Word. So with that, if you have any questions, you can either ask them in the YouTube chat, or you could go to our, let me just kind of show the link again. You can go to the chat room that I have here at this link here, the minute.chat/Ferguson Library Technology Classes. So if you have a question, please hop in there and you can ask me a question. I think I might actually at some point maybe just put this chat room like actually on this page, so you don't even have to go to another page to ask the questions. But for right now, you can click this link and it will take you to the chat room and you can ask questions. So let's continue and actually start working in Microsoft Word. So I'm going to come back here. I'm up here on the top. I'm going to click Home, and it's going to take me back to actually the home of the Backstage View. Right above Home is this little leftward pointing arrow. This is a back arrow. I'm going to click that there, and that will take me back to my Word document that I was starting to work on here. So we are going to, let me just set this over here so I can see my steps that I'm doing. Let me put my exercise sheet down here. So we are going to take a look at, we're going to start entering and start working with text on our Microsoft Word document now. So if you've gone and gotten the handout from Ferguson Library Classes.com, so you've gotten this handout here. The first page here just has kind of what we're covering in this class here. It has some of the things that I talked about with the ribbon here, so commands and the different groups. And here's the thing where they talk about the arrows, so just kind of a little bit refresher as you're kind of working on there. There's some keyboard shortcuts down here. I'll talk about keyboard shortcuts in just a bit when we have some text to kind of play around with. Right now, keyboard shortcuts don't mean much when we don't really have anything else to work with. So I'll be coming back to this here, but this is just kind of a handy reference of some common keyboard shortcuts that you can use in Microsoft Word. So I'm going to go to the second page, and the second page here has the exercise that we're doing. So we're going to do open a new Word document, which I've already done. And then I will give you some time to go and do this here. And then the thing that we're going to do is that we're going to type in on the first line, we're going to type this line here. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. And then we're going to save the document over to the desktop. So let me go demonstrate that, and then I'll give you some time to go and work on it yourself. So I've done the first step. I've opened a new Word document. Right here on the first line, I'm going to type in the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. And so the significance of this line, actually, just kind of a little bit of trivia, is the significance of this line, this sentence here, is that it contains every letter in the alphabet, at least once. So that's just kind of a fun thing. And so now that I've typed this in, I'm going to save the file. I'm going to come up here to File, and I'm going to come down to Save. Now, in your case, because it's a new file, you know what, actually, let me do that. I'm going to come here, I'm going to do New File, Blank Document. So I'm going to blank document here. I'm going to then type in again the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. Bing. Okay, so, and then I'm going to come here to File, and I'm going to go to Save As for the first time. I can either click Save or Save As. It doesn't matter. Do which one you prefer. And then I'm going to click where it says Documents here because I want to save this on my desktop. I'm going to come here to Desktop, and we're just going to save this as, I'm going to just save it as Basic Word Class. I'm just going to save it as that Basic Word Class again. You can give whatever name that you want. It doesn't really matter. And the reason I'm doing it on the desktop is just to kind of make it easier to find later on. So if you wanted to delete it or continue practicing, it's a good place to find the file. Now I'm just going to click Save. This is telling me that it's already, I'm going to just replace. You're not going to get that little box because it's just telling me, oh, that file is already there. Do you sure you want to save it? And it's like, yeah, I do. Let me just close this, and so we're back here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give about 2 minutes so that you can go and follow along. So what you want to do again is you want to open up Microsoft Word on your computer, open a new Word document by clicking on the new blank document, and then in the first line you're going to type the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog, and then you're going to save it. And you can save it wherever you want. I recommend saving it to the desktop to make it easy to find for this time, but you can save it wherever you want on your computer. So take about 2 minutes, and if you have any questions, please ask them in either of the chats. All right, so it doesn't seem like there are any questions, so hopefully people have caught up to where we're at now with our line and our file saved. So the next thing we're going to look at how to do is we're going to look at a skill called highlighting. And so what highlighting does, it allows you to select the text, which then when you have text selected, you're able to do different, you're able to transform it or do different things to it. You're able to copy it, you're able to change the font. And so there are a couple different ways that you can highlight text in Microsoft Word. So let's see, where's my mouse? Here's my mouse. You can see my mouse? Okay, good. So the first way is to use your mouse. And so what you do is you actually click and drag over the text that you want to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click, and you notice as I move my mouse around, up here it looks like a little white arrow. When I get down into here, it looks like this line with it looks like a funny looking I, capital I, on there. And what this is this is what's known as the insert cursor. It's actually easy to remember because it looks like an I, and I stands for insert. So it's the insert cursor. But what it actually is that this line, if I put it anywhere into my text and click, what it'll do is it will move the flashing, what's also known as a cursor, the flashing cursor to wherever I click inside the line. And what that flashing cursor is, this little flashing line that you can see right here. Let me see if I zoom in, can we make it bigger? Yeah, there we go. So yeah, so this flashing line here is where, if I start typing text, so like I start typing things in such, is where the text will show up in Microsoft Word. And so I can move that around by looking at my little insert mouse cursor here, the I, and kind of click to different places to move where that's around. Now, if I put my cursor at the beginning of the line and click and don't let go, I'm holding down my mouse, and then I'm going to drag to the right. You'll notice that I'm dragging this, like there's like this bar that highlights over it all. And that's highlighting. It's almost like the idea of taking like a highlighter on a page and kind of highlighting. It's temporary. If I click somewhere else, it will let go of the highlight. But during the time that I have this highlighted, I have now what they call selected this text, which means now I can do things like I can change the size of it by using up here in my font section. I can make it larger, I can make it smaller, I can change the font. So if I don't want to have it in Times New Roman, I can make it Algerian, or I can make it Amethyst, I can make it Arial Black. I can change the font, and it will only, let me actually show. And what happens is that those font changes, those changes that I'm doing to the font, will only do it on the parts that are selected. So if I just say highlight, select the word brown, and make it bigger, you notice that only the word brown is getting bigger. All the other words are staying the same. So selecting, and it doesn't even just have to be a word. I could do it with a letter. So if I take like the O in the middle of brown and make it smaller, there we go. So now what happens is now you can see all of the text that I didn't highlight or highlight or select didn't change. The word that I selected changed when I chose it, and then the specific letter when I chose that one changed with that. So that's why this is kind of a key skill to working in Microsoft Word. Let's see if I can get this all to the right size. There we go. So now it's all right back to the same size. Is being able to highlight the text. And so you can do that there by clicking and dragging over your text or whatever piece of text that you want to do. If you have something selected, you can click anywhere on your page, click down here to let the highlight go. So if you accidentally selected something and you didn't want to make any changes, you don't want to do anything with it and such, just click, it goes away. Easy as that. Now, as I mentioned, there are two different ways that you can highlight text in Microsoft Word. Now, using the mouse to highlight is all well and good. It's fast. It can be really fast. If I had a lot more text, I could drag it and move really quickly on there. But sometimes people, especially people who are just starting off on the computer, using the mouse may not be the easiest skill. They're still practicing, still getting used to using the mouse to kind of control things on the computer. And sometimes it can be imprecise. Like it can be if I'm trying to get here and it's like if you notice how when I try to go over the word over, it kind of jumps to the end like of the word really easily. And sometimes it can be a little bit more difficult to have kind of the specific precision that you're looking for on there. So the second way that you can highlight is by using the Shift key. And what does that do? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click at the start of the sentence. I'm going to hold down the Shift key on my keyboard. So the Shift key, see if I can show it right here, is I'm going to hold down the Shift key right here. I'm just going to hold it down. And then what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to use my arrow keys. So the arrow keys are on my keyboard, are right over, let me see if I can get this onto the camera. There we go, right over there. And so what I'm going to do is my flashing cursor is right here at the start of the sentence. I'm going to hold down Shift, and I'm going to hit the right arrow button. And the arrow button moves the cursor back and forth. So I can move it to the left, I can move it to the right. I can move it up and down if there were lines for me to move up and down, but there aren't, so I can't show that there. And so just by doing this here, I'm just tapping it, and each time I tap it, it will move over one space or one letter, depending on what's there. If I hold it down, it'll move over faster. But what this will do is this allows me to be very precise on what I select without having to use the mouse. It's also convenient if you don't want to pick up your hands and go use the mouse. If you're typing something and you want to do something really quickly, you can just hold down Shift, move the arrow keys back and forth, and select what you need to do. So those are the two different ways to highlight on in Microsoft Word. One of them is you can use the mouse and click and drag over where you want to go. The other way is to place the cursor at either the start or end of what you want to select, hold down the Shift key, and then use the left or right arrows to move the cursor over the text that you want to select. So what we're going to do now is we are going to, and you'll have time to practice that there. This is something, get in, if you're not familiar with this kind of skill, get in there, practice, try it around, try it with the mouse, try it with the keyboard, find what you're comfortable using. There's no right or wrong way of doing this. So now what we're going to do is we're going to copy and paste the sentence. So we're going to use the copy and paste feature that's built into Microsoft Word here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight or select the text that I want to copy and paste. In this case, it's easy. I want to copy the entire line. And so I'm just using my mouse. I'm dragging over the whole line there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up, and you can notice now, actually, let me actually unclick here. You can see right up here in the clipboard section on the ribbon up in the top left here, you notice that the cut and copy options here are grayed out. And basically what they are is they're what they call context-sensitive features, so which means that right now there isn't anything selected for them to cut or copy. You notice that as soon as I drag and I highlight my sentence here, they now light up, and now they're available to be clicked on. I can actually move my mouse over them, and you can see how it actually like chooses one or the other. Now, cut or copy are kind of two sides of the same coin. Copy is very obvious what it will do. Copy will make copies of the text. So if I copy this sentence that I have on my page here, and then I go paste it. This is where the copy and paste comes in. It's like peanut butter and jelly. You have copy and paste. The paste will put a new copy of that line wherever I want to put it. The original line, the first line that I highlighted that I copied, will stay in the same place. Now cut, if I cut and paste, what it will do actually is that it will still copy the text. But what happens is when I paste it, it will delete the original space. So what it's done is, so cut is useful if you want to move text from one place to another. You don't want to leave it where it was before. You want to completely move it. Like if you wanted to move text from page 1 to page 3, you would cut it from page 1 and then you would paste it onto page 3. Copy is useful if you just want to make a whole bunch of copies of the same thing and have them on different pages or on the same page. So what we're going to do here actually is we are going to copy this sentence. So I have it highlighted. Again, I'm going to click and drag and select the sentence that I want. I'm going to come up here to copy, and I'm going to click copy. Now you notice it doesn't do much. This stays in the same place. I just happen to know from my experience using computers that when I click copy, it's now stored in what's known as the clipboard. You can see a little clipboard down there. And the clipboard is where Windows stores all the different things. Now, if I go and select a different set of text here and hit copy, it will copy over what I copied before. So like before I had the whole sentence. Now if I just do copy for jumped over the, I can no longer paste the whole sentence. I can only paste jumped over the. So it's kind of like it's not a one-time thing, but it's like if you copy something and you don't paste it, and then you go copy something else, you'll lose the first thing that you copied. So I'm going to copy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come here to the end of the line, and I'm going to hit enter, and it's going to bring me down to a new line, and I'm going to then click paste. I'm going to just remember I was talking about the two different parts of the buttons there. I'm going to click the top part of the button up here, that's just paste, and you notice there it is. It's done a copy of the line. Boom, right underneath. If I hit this a couple more times, it will create some more copies. Now there are just like well, this is a good time to introduce keyboard shortcuts. So you've noticed that what I've done is I've highlighted a sentence here, and then I've come up and used my mouse to select a button on the ribbon here. But what I can also do is I can highlight the sentence here. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this looking a little different. I'm going to highlight these two sentences here, the bottom two, and instead of coming up and clicking copy, I'm going to use Control C. So if I put my mouse over copy, you'll see that in parentheses next to copy says Control plus C. And so that's the keyboard shortcut. Just like Control S was the keyboard shortcut for save, Control C is the keyboard shortcut for copy. So I'm going to hold down the Control key on my keyboard. So the Control key is usually in the bottom left of your keyboard. It's the bottom left one. So you have your space bar at the very bottom, and then you go to the left as far as you can. It will be that last button over there. It'll say CTRL. That's the Control button. I'm going to hold it down, and while I'm holding it down with one hand, so I'm holding it down with my left hand here, I'm going to take my right hand, and I'm going to go over and hit the C button. So C. Oop, hold on. C. There we go. So now I have it copied. So this did the same thing as it did if I came up here and clicked the copy button. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to enter a couple times just to kind of give a little space between my sections here. And now I'm going to paste it using a keyboard shortcut. And so if I come up here to paste, if I put my mouse over paste, you'll see that next to paste on the tooltip, it says Control plus V. So paste is Control V. So I'm going to hold down the Control like I did before, and then I'm going to hit the V key. So the V is right next to the C. There's a reason actually. Cut. Remember I was talking about cut. Cut is Control X, and you notice the X, C, and V are all next to each other on the keyboard. So C is easy to remember because it's copy, and then the paste and cut are like right next to it there. So everything's kind of linked together on the keyboard. I'm going to hold down Control, and I'm going to hit the V key, and now you can see now it's pasted the two lines that I copied using a keyboard shortcut before. Now if I wanted to, I can just keep hitting Control V and keep pasting the lines on there. So finally, the last keyboard shortcut I just kind of want to show that's really kind of handy to use is what they call Select All. So I've shown you how to select with the mouse by clicking and dragging. I've shown you how to select by using Shift and the arrow keys. Now what happens if I want to select all of the text that I have on my page? So one thing I could do actually is I can click and drag over the whole thing. This is fine with what I've entered here on this page. I mean, I only have a few lines on here. It's all visible on the same screen. What happens if my document has 15, 30, 100 pages, and I want to select all those 100 pages? I could sit at the top, click, and then drag down and let it go down all the way down and let it keep going. It's tiresome. It's slow. It doesn't really work all that well. But if you hold down, so there's a very convenient keyboard shortcut called Select All that if you hold down the Control key and hit A, so it's Control A for all. So I'm going to hold down Control, I'm going to hit A, and it will automatically select the whole document, everything in the document. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to copy. So I hit Control A, I'm going to hit Control C, oops, hold on, Control C, and then I'm going to come down here to the bottom, and I'm just going to hit Control V, and it's pasted the whole thing on there. So I was able to make an easy copy of the whole thing by hitting Control A, Control C, and then Control V. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give about 2 minutes for you to go and practice this on your own. If you have questions, please leave them in the YouTube chat or in the chat room that's linked on the technology class pages. What you'll want to do is you want to practice doing some highlighting on the text that you have there, and then you want to copy and paste. So copy and paste both by using the buttons on the clipboard on the ribbon there, and then also trying the keyboard shortcuts, the Control C, the Control V, and then try selecting everything using Control A, and then pasting everything using then copy and then pasting everything with Control V. If you have any questions, let me know, and I'll give you about 2 minutes on this. Okay, so now hopefully you've been able to practice kind of the skills of highlighting and doing some copying and pasting. So as you're typing things in Microsoft Word, not only we're not all perfect typists. We all make errors. We all make mistakes. Sometimes we want to change what they have. Like I'm looking at this here, and it's like I have too many copies of the same line on this page. I don't need to have this many copies. I mean, we never need to have this many brown foxes jumping over lazy dogs. So sometimes what you need to do is you need to delete what you've written. And so just like a lot of things using Microsoft Word, there are multiple ways to delete text in Microsoft Word. And so the two things that we want to look at are, we're going to be looking at the Backspace key and then the delete key on your keyboard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my cursor, I'm going to click in here, I'm going to put my cursor into a place wherever I want it. So I'm going to put my cursor here at the end of this line. So the end of this, whatever line. It doesn't really matter which line it is. It's just that this line here is the one that I want to delete. And now I'm going to put it over onto the right side of the line, so the end of the line, and then I'm going to hit the backspace key. And so the backspace key says kind of what the name of the key does, is that it will move back a space, but then it'll also delete whatever it's moving back over. So you use backspace to delete anything to the left of the cursor. So here I am at the end of the sentence, and so it's going to, if I hit backspace, it's going to delete anything going this direction here to the left. So I'm going to hit it once, there goes the period, hit it one second time, there goes the G, another time there goes the O, another time there goes D. So now we no longer have a lazy dog, we just have a lazy something. Hit backspace and it deletes that empty space, or that space that was in between the two words, and I just keep hitting it. Every time I hit it, it will move to the left one more space, deleting the character or whatever's in that space there that it was deleting. If I hold it down, it will move a little bit faster. Now also in Microsoft Word, if I wanted to, suppose I didn't want to delete things to the left of the line. Suppose I wanted to delete things to the right of where the cursor is. So I'm going to come here at the beginning of the line and right on your keyboard. Sometimes it's hard to define where the delete key is on your keyboard because it's always kind of in different places. But you'll notice, and it will either say DEL or it'll say the whole word delete. On my keyboard, it happens to say the whole word delete, but on a lot of keyboards, it will say DEL. And let me just, it will say DEL. So it'll say that right there. Or it might say delete. And so what delete will do is if I put my cursor here at the start of the line, just like backspace will delete everything to the left of the cursor, delete will delete anything to the right of the cursor. So if I hit it once, there goes the T at the beginning of the sentence. Do it a second time, there goes the H, there goes the E, there goes the space, there goes the Q, and if I hold it down, it will delete everything, and there I deleted too much, so I'm just going to put that T back in place. So those are the kind of the two different ways to use to kind of delete text on there. Now you notice that I've deleted that sentence and I realized, oh, that was not the sentence I wanted to delete. I actually want to delete something a little bit further on the page. Uh-oh, I could either retype the sentence, but sometimes you don't always want to retype things. So what I can do actually is I can undo what I just did. Now if you notice right up here on the top, on this title bar, remember we were looking at the save icon up here on the top left? Right next to it is this little like loopy leftward pointing arrow. And what this is this is the undo command. And so what the undo command will do is it will undo the last thing that you did in Microsoft Word. So if I click it once, remember before I typed that T because it got missing for the line there and such, so it's removed that again, and I keep clicking it. So now as I keep clicking it, it will start undoing each of the different things that I've done as I've been demonstrating this to you. So I'm just going to keep deleting it until I get my whole line back. There we go. So there's my whole line back in place. Now you notice right next to it is a is now a rightward kind of loopy arrow, and so what happens is I can then redo. So if I undo too many times, I can then redo what I did there. There's also a really convenient shortcut to undo, which is Control Z. So if I hit backspace and then hit Control Z, you can see that it actually undoes. So I always Control Z along with basically the two keyboard shortcuts that I think you should always learn and kind of really kind of start what they call learn muscle memory for are save, Control S, so that it's automatic. Anytime that you're just kind of even just thinking about saving, you automatically just go over and hit Control S and you save it. The other thing is Control Z, is that when you do something and you sit there and instead of panicking, if you do something wrong in Microsoft Word, don't panic. In almost every situation that you can do in Microsoft Word, you can undo what you just did. So instead of trying to click or type or do anything and such, kind of take your hands off the keyboard, just kind of take a breath, and then go over and hit Control Z on your keyboard. And what that'll do is that should undo what you just did. Keep hitting Control Z until you get back to where you want it to be. So again, don't panic. It's also a good way to try things out. If I wanted to see, okay, I want to highlight all this here and I want to see what this looks like if I make it bold. There it is. Okay, that's not really like what I want. I can hit Control Z and undo it. So it allows you to experiment and try things and then kind of quickly undo and get back to the way that you were before you do something. So I am going to take about a minute, because deleting and backspacing and undoing shouldn't take that long. Take about a minute and go practice this in your own document. What you'll want to do is click at the right end, at the end of one of the sentences, and then hit backspace a few times on your keyboard. So the backspace is going to be in the top right of your keyboard, of the letter section of your keyboard. Sometimes keyboards have an expanded section on them. You want where all the letters are in the top right corner of that there usually is your backspace key. And it's a larger key than most of the other keys. And then after you've deleted, use backspace to delete some places there. Click at the start of the same line and use the delete key or the DEL key to delete some things from the right side or the left side of the sentence. And then use Control Z to undo some of that deleting. Let me know if you have any questions in either of the chats. Again, you have about a minute for this. Alright, so hopefully you've been able to practice deleting things either from the right or the left, and then using the undo command. Remember, the undo command is your friend. Always kind of remember that there. So far in this class, we've gone through, we've looked at kind of how Microsoft Word is laid out and how to find certain different tools. We've typed in some things. We've done the basic things you want to do in Microsoft Word. We've typed in some text. We've saved the file. I showed you how to highlight or select text and how to delete text on there. Some of the things that you also want to do in Microsoft Word sometimes is to change the formatting of the text. We don't want everything to look just boring, everything the same. Sometimes you want to kind of make some text stand out, look a little different than the text around it, or you just want the whole thing, your whole document to look a little bit different. So we can do that using some of the different formatting tools or formatting text tools that Microsoft Word has. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at how to make things bold on the keyboard or on your text. So what we're going to do is we're going to select a sentence. So again, you can highlight or use the shift thing on there. So we're just going to select one of the lines, and then right up here in the font section, there's this little B underneath there. And if I put my mouse over it, you can see it says bold. Also to pay note that there's a keyboard shortcut for bold too. It's Control B. So if I click on this, what this will do is bold makes the text a little larger and a lot darker. And so what it does is if I unselect, you can see how this, it stands apart from the different lines around it. It really kind of jumps out. Now I could do just a single word and make that bold. If I do that, you can see now that the jump really kind of jumps out of the sentence there. No pun intended. So bold allows you to kind of do a format that really kind of allows you to emphasize or kind of give urgency to the text in a way. In fact, when you're building web pages, usually the command to make something bold is actually it can be used as a strong command. And so you can see we're making the text stronger. Just like when you're doing saving or undoing or copying and pasting, there is a keyboard shortcut for making things bold. If I highlight this here and hold down the Control key and hit B, I can unbold. So it's bold. It's like a toggle. You can either turn it on or turn it off on the text. So if the text is not already bold, and I hit the keyboard shortcut or hit bold up here, it becomes bold. If I select text that is already bold, like this jumped, if I don't want this here, I select this here, and you can see that it's already bold. The bold up here is highlighted, it's lit up, and hit Control B, it will unbold it as well too. So you can do those different kind of toggles. You can make things bold or you can make things unbold. Another way that you can kind of emphasize text is by using italics. And so italics is that kind of like slanted text that we see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight another sentence, and I'm going to come up and I'm going to hit right next to the bold is this little slanted I up there. This is the Italicize text. And so when I click on it, you can see now is that it's now kind of slanted and kind of angled text that shows up on there. It's another way of it doesn't stand out as much as the bold does, but it still makes the text look a little different than all the text around it. So and once again, just like with bold, is the keyboard shortcut for italics is I, Control I. So Control B for bold, B for bold, Control I for italics, Control I, and it's a toggle, just like the bold is. So I can either make things italicized or make italicized things back to normal. The final common formatting tool that a lot of people use is Underline. So I'm going to select another line here, and I'm going to come up, and there's this U with a line underneath it. So Underline basically draws a line underneath the text. So click on that, and it draws a line underneath the text. So I click there. So you can see, again, it's another way of kind of emphasizing or making that text kind of stand out from the rest of the text around it. Now you'll notice Underline, at least in my version of Microsoft Word here, is one of these two-part buttons. Remember I was showing you the two-part buttons over here on Paste. So this has one of those two-part buttons, and if I click here, what I can do is I can actually select the different type of underline that I want. So usually by default, it's just going to be this single thin line drawn underneath. But if I want to make it darker, or I want to do kind of a dotted line underneath, I can do that easily as well too, just by using the right part of the underline button where that little like menu pop open, and I get some options there. So take about another minute of your own. Go in, choose one of the lines that you have on your document, make it bold by using the B button up here or hitting Control B. Choose another line and italicize it, and then highlight a third line and make that one underlined. Or you can practice as much as you want, but take a minute, kind of practice those different skills. If you have questions, please drop them in the chat, and I'll be waiting, and then we will continue. All right, so that's good. So we've done some basic formatting kind of things, and that's kind of a lot of what you end up doing in Microsoft Word. You put in some text, and then you go back and you make things kind of stand out a little differently. You make them bold, you make them italicized. There are sometimes rules about why you do certain things, like if you're doing like a book title, a lot of times book titles are italicized. Though the rule of thumb usually is that if you're handwriting, you'll underline the title, but if you're typing it, you'll italicize it. I like to use bold. Actually, if you notice, like on the handout, I like to use bold to kind of like highlight certain specific elements of the instructions there. You'll notice actually here on the italicize or italics, I've kind of matched, or underline, I've kind of matched kind of what the formatting is. In most cases, I probably would have done these as bold if I was doing instructions for any other kind of handouts. So I use it to kind of make things kind of stand out. That's where your eye gets drawn to. So bold's really good for that kind of purpose. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at changing the font. So the font is how the different letters actually look. Font design and what they call typecast, or not typecast, typography is a long, old art that's been around since since Gutenberg first created the printing press in the 1400s. The interesting thing about fonts is there are some fonts that they have kind of a long, very long storied past. These things go back to the 19th century, the 17th century, or the 18th century. It's been people who are working with printing presses. They designed what these letters look, and we've kind of carried that forward into our modern era here, into our digital era, and we've kind of brought those text designs with us. And that's where you get some of these like fun names. Like for example, I have mine here on what's known as Times New Roman. Times New Roman is the font I have always used in Microsoft Word. I've used it for a long time. It's what they call a serif font, S-E-R-I-F. And what that means is that you can see at the top parts of things like the top part of D or L, or yeah, there's another D, or like B, there's that little kind of like flick mark at the top of the letter. Or you can see down at the bottom of the Q, there's like a little like kind of like platform that's there. Or you even here, the T is a good way of looking at it. T is a good. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this big and kind of show this there. Okay, so yeah, here we go. Now you can really see. So you see how the T, instead of it just being a flat crossbar and a flat support pillar on there and such, it has this like little flourishes there and such. Those are what are called serifs. And so Times New Roman is what's known as a serifed font. And there's a lot of different kind of discussions about using either what they call serif fonts or using what they call sans serif. Sans serif fonts don't have those little flourishes. Let me actually show you. So in, I think, Office 2000, it might have been Office 2010. Office 2010, for the longest time in Microsoft Word, the default font was Times New Roman, what I've been using here, which is why I use it, because I've been using this for like 25 years. In 2010, when Microsoft Office, or when Microsoft released Word 2010, they brought in a new font that they designed called Calibri. You can see Calibri here. And actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these two thes, and I'm going to kind of make them a bit. I'm getting a little bit off track here, but you know what? That's fine. Actually, let me undo this, redo. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make these two a little bit larger to kind of make it easier to see on the screen. And so you can kind of see the differences between the two texts. So like, again, here we have our Times New Roman, which is a serifed font. And then we have Calibri, which is a sans serif font. And you can see it's a much simpler, more basic font. There aren't those little flourishes going through. And so the difference in kind of what ends up happening, kind of the research has shown, is that when you're reading in print, like you're actually reading off of paper, people tend to read serifed fonts. So the font that has the little flourishes better. It's easier for their eyes to kind of differentiate the different letters, being able to identify like a lowercase L versus like a capital I. It's easier when you're actually doing things like actually on printed paper. Whereas if you're doing things digitally on a screen, kind of it's recommended to use a sans serif font. So like the Calibri down here, the one that doesn't have the extra little, because when our eyes are reading on a screen, it's easier for them to kind of read the font without those kind of serif fonts on there. So you choose different fonts either for the design of the document that you're doing it there, or to kind of improve the readability of the document. There are some fonts out there that are like very difficult to read. For example, let's see if I can find one. Yeah, something very hard to read, like this Edwardian. This is an Edwardian script, and so it kind of copies doing like cursive or a flourishy handwriting kind of script, but it's more difficult to read on the screen. And so this year it looks nice, it looks fancy. You might use it like in an invitation that you design in Microsoft, but for anything that you're typing for your own basic purposes, it's not a really good font. And like I wouldn't recommend, say, writing emails using this font. It looks fancy, it looks pretty. I love how this font actually looks, but it's not something I would use every day as I'm sitting here using Microsoft Word. So how do you change the font? I mean, I've just demonstrated it a few times, but now actually let me walk through the steps. So just like when we've been changing all the formatting, whether we've been making things bold or making things italicized, it all starts with highlighting the text that you want to change. So we're going to select a line that we want to change, and then right up in the font section where it's going to say the name of the font, and yours, if you're using the default with Microsoft Word, it's going to say Calibri on there. Mine says Times New Roman because that's what I've set mine as. I'm going to click the little like downward pointing arrow over there, which will open up the menu of all the different fonts. And what you can do then is you can just kind of scroll down and see all the different fonts. I may have more fonts installed than you do. You may have more fonts than I do. I just have, there's a lot of fonts on here. And you find one that you like. So I like, say, this one here that says November. I like this one here. So I just, and you'll notice actually is that over here, in my body of my document, it's actually giving me kind of a live overview, a live kind of preview of what that will look like if I choose it. So there's Old English, another one that's not really easy to read. Let's go with this November one. I like this November one here. So I'm going to click this, and I'm just going to click on it, and then it will change the font to what I selected. And you can see right up here, it says that it's November font. If I go and click back to the line above it, which I hadn't changed, you can see up here, it tells me that this is Times New Roman. So you can able to see kind of the different fonts that I have just by kind of clicking into the lines. Just like when we did bold and underline, by highlighting it again, I can go and change it to a different font if I want to. So I can come down into something like, say, Segway here. So you're able to easily kind of change the different fonts. Right next to the font name, the font selection there, is a box that will have a number in it. And what this is this is the size of the text that's on there. Now, default for Microsoft Word, if you haven't changed any settings, the name of the font is Calibri, as I mentioned, and then the size of the font is 11. I've changed mine. My default is Times New Roman size 12. It doesn't really matter. But this here allows me to choose different sizes for the font, whether I want to make it smaller. So if the number is smaller, then the text shrinks in size. If I go up to larger numbers, it makes it larger in size. Kind of easy to do. Sometimes if you're unable to you're uncertain about like what size you actually want, you can use these two little buttons right next to it. There's a with an upward pointing arrow, and then there's a smaller A with a downward pointing arrow. So this will increase the font. This one will decrease the font. So those are the kind of two different ways that you can kind of change the font and the font size of your text. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you about 2 minutes. Go in and kind of play around. Choose a bunch of different lines. Try a different bunch of fonts, see what they look like. Try changing the size. If you choose a font that's like a little bit too small, try making it bigger. If you do one that's a little bit big, you can make it smaller. Also try doing things like choosing a font. Like if I choose this line here, what happens when I make this bold? And you can see now it got darker. What happens if I make it italicized? It gets even more tipped over. So yeah, try to see kind of what making things, those exercises we did before, things that made things bold and italicized. See what that does to different fonts. So take about 2 minutes, and then we'll kind of continue on looking at the last couple of exercises that we'll be doing tonight. All right, so if you've done some practice changing around the fonts, if you have any questions, again, please leave them in either of the chats. So we're going to look at just a couple more different, about 3 more different kind of skills here in Microsoft Word. So the first that we're going to be looking at is we're going to be looking at what's known as the justification of the text. The justification really says, where does this text exist on kind of the left to right line, or the left to right plane of the page. So by default, I use that word default. Default is basically what like when you open up Microsoft Word and you start typing, what is the settings? That's the default. Like what happens when you just open things up without changing any settings. The default when you start opening up Word start working in Word, is that your text is left justified. And what that does is that means that the left side of the text will all line up. So you can see going down through this here and such, I have things that are different fonts and different sizes, but the left edge on everything is still the same. If you look over on the right is a little bit ragged. This one here goes all the way almost to the edge of the page. This one here, because this is bold, this is a little bit longer than this line here. Italicize is a little bit shorter. Moving down, this font here, even though it's the same size as the font above it, actually this font here is actually larger than the one above it, but you can see it takes up less space. So when things are left justified, the left edge all lines up, but you get kind of a ragged right edge. And this is common. This is how most Word documents are created and made. This is how most documents that you interact with on kind of a daily basis are justified to the left. Now I'm going to move down where I have some extra lines that I haven't done anything with. So we're going to keep this top line here left justified so we can kind of see what that's like. The other option is, instead of being left justified where everything's lined up on the left side, is we can also make things right justified. So I'm going to come up here, and you can see in the paragraph section there's this set of 4 different buttons right here on the paragraph there, and these are your justification buttons. And so I'm going to click the third one over, which if I put my mouse over, you see it says align right, and so it actually tells you it's aligning content with the right margin. So I'm going to click that, and now what it'll do now is now the right side of all of my lines will line up. They'll be precise. Actually, let me do it up here where you can see right now my right edges are kind of ragged because it's different fonts, different sizes. So let me highlight this and let me right justify that. Now you can see now the right edges are all lined up down here, but now the left edges are ragged. So that's what right justification will do, is it will take everything and put it over on the right side of the page. This is useful for things like if you're starting a letter and you want to say put the date over on the right side of the page, instead of typing in and hitting space to move it across the page, on that line you can make that line right justified and start typing, and then it'll start flowing out from the right side of the page. The other option, the third option that happens in justification, there's 4 options, but right now we're going to look at the third one, is center justification. And what center justification will do is, if I hit center, is it will put the text in the middle. And when it's something center justified, it will keep it centered. So if I add in text into the middle here, justified, you can see it kind of moves out to the left and right equally. So it's always keeping the center of the line in the center of the page. So that's the way that you get something kind of put like right into the center. So if you're like, say, typing up like a report and you want to put like, say, a section title in the middle of your page, you can hit the center justification and put it there, and then you go down to your left, your next line, and you make that left justified, and you start typing for the left side again. Now the fourth option, so you can see we have 4 buttons here. We have our left justification, we have our center justification, we have our right justification, and then there's what's called, they just say justify, but what it is it's what's known as full justification. And what full justification does is it makes that the as much as it can, it tries to make sure that your left edge and your right edge are lined up. So you can see here, like here we have kind of a ragged right edge. Up here we kind of have a ragged left edge. I'm going to take this here and let's see what happens when I put this into full justification. Nothing happened actually, because I'm not going out towards the edge of the line. You know what, let me actually let me see if I can make this actually do something. There we go. And let's put you, oops, space. There we go. Okay, so let's do this as, okay, this is, okay, left just, okay, so here we go. So you can see now actually what it will do actually, so right now it's all less justified, so it's all lining up over here on the left side. You can see we have a little bit of a ragged edge down over here on the right. When I hit full justification, it kind of pushes out. It's still a little bit of a ragged edge, but this goes out as far as it can while making sure that this word is down there. Now, if I do something like make this as a really long word, now because I've lost words, see how the space, this is still one space in between there, but it makes it larger because it's trying to kind of fill up the whole line from the left all the way to the right. If I go in and make you even longer, there we go. So now what happens is now this line just has very few, so it has very big spaces. So this is what happens sometimes with full justification, is if you use it unwisely, you're gonna get something that looks, and it's gonna be, and so if I do this for like all of this here, full justification, you can see this all lines up really neatly there and such, but then I get this one line that's really kind of crazy that has all of these big spaces because I have some really long words that show up on the next line. So full justification is commonly what you see in like newspaper articles. Newspaper articles in each column tends to be full justified. It goes from, you get kind of like flat edges on there, and that's why sometimes when you're reading newspaper articles, sometimes there's like a really big gap between words because it's like all of a sudden they only have 2 words on a line because the next word is like a really long word that fills up all of the next line. So full justification does give you, in the long run, gives you some nice looking edges, but it can also do some like weird, quirky things into the text. So I don't tend to use it a lot. I tend to do almost everything I need to do in like left justification, or like right justification if necessary, or center kind of in there. So I use those kind of most frequently. Let's look at, okay, so just a couple more things. We'll just go over a couple more things, then allow you to practice and kind of give you room, opportunity for questions. So the next exercise that we're going to look at is we're going to look at how to change the color of the text. Everything we've been doing here has all been black and white, black text on a white background. But with Microsoft Word, you can kind of make things colorful as well too. So how do we do that? Well, just like with everything else we've been doing, we highlight the text that we want. So I'm going to take the second line on my page here, and you know what, instead of making this black, I want to make this text red. So I'm going to come up here, and there's these little lines up here in the font section of the home ribbon, and this right one over here is what they call font color. And you can see I put my mouse over it, and it tells me change the color of your text. This is another one of those 2-part buttons. So if I click on here, this is right now is underlined with a red line, which tells me that the chosen color is red. So if I click on this, boom, it changes my text red. What happens if I want to do a different color other than red? So let me highlight another line. And if I click it right now, it becomes red. Not what I'm looking for. So I'm going to move my mouse over to the other part of the button, this little downward things that will actually open up a menu, or what they call a palette here. And now I can choose a different color. So if I want to make this line blue, I can go and choose light blue here. Boom. And now I have blue text. If I go to the next one, I can highlight, and I can, if I click this again, it's blue, because this will always be set to the last color that you selected. If I choose the drop down, I can make it, let's make it purple. So now I have red, blue, purple. I should have actually, you know what, actually, let's do this, because this will be right. I'll have the purple in between the red and blue. Actually, there's actually a really interesting thing about the color purple, that the color purple does not actually exist, and our eyes actually invent the color. Really kind of interesting things. Definitely not going to go into this class here, but yeah, there's a really kind of cool thing that because blue and red exist at different ends of the spectrum, there's no way that they kind of merge together. So our eyes kind of invent the color. It's cool. There's a really neat thing. Go out and search for like purple's not a real color, and kind of read up on it. It's a really nifty kind of thing. But, so you can see I've changed the color of the text just by using the little font color option. You can also highlight. Highlight is changing the background behind the text. So if I say highlight my next line here, and right over here, I put my mouse, this is the text highlight color, and say make your text pop by highlighting a bright color. The default is yellow because who hasn't used a yellow highlighter in their past? So I'm going to click this, and now you can see now it's almost done like if I was like working on like a piece of like written text and I had like an actual physical highlighter and drew it over the text, it gives me that kind of simulation on there. So you're able to go through and highlight the text and kind of make it stand out. So just like we were able to make text stand out using bold and italic and underline, you can also make your text stand out using things like highlight or colors. And you can mix and match. So like right now this is highlighted yellow with black text. But if I select this, I can then make this red. So now I have red text with a yellow background. I can take my purple here and let's highlight this in bright green. There we go. So now I've been able to kind of change the colors and kind of make things kind of stand out and look a little bit different overall. The final thing I just want to kind of demonstrate in this class here is that we're going to look at line spacing. So right now, all of my lines here are single spaced. There's no extra space between the different lines. But often cases, like if you were doing essays or papers for school, or sometimes you may even have to do it for reports, or if you're creating something that you want to have people to be able to print out and maybe have room to make notes or something, you may want to add additional space between the lines. And so what you'll do is you actually select, so this is something that's in the paragraph section of, and so you want to actually do it with like a bunch of text. So I'm going to select this whole top section up here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually put double spacing between all of the between the things there. And so you can find spacing. It's in a couple different, it's like right here. There's this button right here that shows like the up and down. If I click on this here, you can see right now it's 1.15. If I go to 1, things get a little bit closer. If I go up to 2, you can now see I now have this extra space. And you notice if I click in this space, I can't go there. All it is it's extra white space that Word puts in there between the lines, but it's not space that you can put your own text. So that is the line spacing. Line spacing is also available in, if I open up the pop-up for paragraph there. It's available in this section down here. And you can see right now it said it's double. I can go through and make it single again. I can do it 1.5. I can do multiple. If I wanted to do 3 space, there we go. Now I have 3 spaces in between if I wanted to. So you're able to go through and kind of choose the different line spacing that you have. So I'm going to say take about 2 minutes. Go in, play around with the justification. So put things on the left, put things on the right, put things in the center. See what happens when you do full justification and make some like really long words by typing gibberish like I've done here. Change the color of some text. So highlight something and choose the color tool. Change the highlight behind the text by using the highlight tool. And then also select like a whole section of lines and play around with the line spacing and see what kind of happens there. If you have questions, please drop them in the chat, either of them, and I'll be here to answer your questions. So take 2 minutes for this, and then we will wrap this class up. All right, so I want to thank you all for, I don't see any questions coming up, so I'm hoping everybody has gotten these skills. I want to thank you for attending this basic Microsoft Word class tonight with the Ferguson library. Let me just change over here so you can see me a little bit better. So this has been basic Microsoft Word. Now, if you want to continue practicing, we do offer access to a service called Udemy, provided by Galen. Actually, let me show you how to access Udemy on there. So if you go to the Ferguson Library website and come up here to Learn and Explore, we have a Careers and Education page. If you click on that, and then we're going to come down and we're going to come here to Computer Skills. It'll be right down at the bottom. There will be a link here called Udemy. And so what I recommend is heading there. You'll need to sign in with your library card number, your Ferguson library card number, and then you'll have to either sign in with a Google or a Microsoft account. Fortunately, that's the requirements on there. And then you can be able to do a search for like basic Microsoft Word in there to kind of continue your skills. If you do want to continue learning with us, I will be offering our intermediate Microsoft Word class next Tuesday, same time as tonight. So it'll be from 7 to 9 right here on the Ferguson Library YouTube channel. So the Ferguson Library YouTube channel right here. So if you're willing to continue, what we'll be doing is we'll be looking at kind of the next kind of, tonight we've looked at how to add text and format and do some of the basic kind of stuff that you can do in Microsoft Word, obviously because of the basic. Next class, we're going to kind of move a little bit further and look at how to do things like add pictures to your how to add pictures to your Word file, how to add things like a table, and how to do things like styles. Styles are a really kind of cool tool that's built into Microsoft Word, and so we'll look at kind of the different ways to kind of offer how to use those kind of things. And then in 2 weeks, on September 15th, I will be doing Advanced Microsoft Word, which will look at things like how to work with longer documents, how to do things like page numbers, and how to work with like different sections and different pages, and then also how to work in Microsoft Word with other people. So those are our 3 upcoming classes, and then after that, we'll be diving into Excel. So if you want to start learning another program, some classes for that there as well too. I would like to mention that if you have taken this class and you've enjoyed it, please go to the link here, www.projectoutcome.org/responses/50591, and what that will do is that will take you to the feedback form that you can give me how well you found this class and leave me comments about that. If I need to do things better, if you didn't enjoy it, please let me know. This link is also available on the online tech classes page. In the basic Microsoft Word, there's this link here for evaluation survey. So if you click that, that will also take you to the survey. So with that, thank you for anybody who enjoyed me tonight. I will hang around for just another couple of minutes in case there's any questions. Please leave them in either of the chats. If not, I hope to see you next Tuesday for Intermediate Word. Thank you and good night. As there are no questions, thank you very much and good night, and have a nice evening, and hope to see you next week.